bigger pleasure if it's to introduce Anne Lacaton. We want to welcome you to this lecture series called November Talks that is organized by the MCH, the Master in Collective Housing, run by Txema Lapuerta, that has made everything possible. We have also the support of the STO Foundation, the Stiftung, that is organizing in parallel in November weekly lectures in multiple cities. It will happen also in Paris, in Ghent, in Stuttgart, in Vienna, Venice, Prague, and since today in Madrid, and hopefully from now on every year in Madrid. This lecture series will have today Anne Lacaton from Lacaton and Basal Architects, and next week we will receive Jacob van Rijs from MVRDV, the Dutch office, and after that Herboje Neric from Zagreb, and we will close the series this year with Dietmar Evele from the office, the Austrian office, Baumschlager Evele Architekten, and well, I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for you that you cannot skip. Well, we will have the pleasure to have Anne here for a lecture, and after that we will have the possibility to ask her some questions, so please be ready for that moment. I never had such a clear opportunity to say that my guest doesn't need any presentation, but Txema asked me to do it, so I will have to go on some very well-known details. She comes from Bordeaux, and she founded her professional practice in 1987, together with Jean-Philippe Vassal. And before that, they had a very, I would say, cathartic professional experience in Africa. They were for some years in Niger, and this experience in the limits of the Sahara was considered by them as a second school. And this is something that we can see behind some of the aspects that hopefully we can see today. This professional practice has received all the important prizes that we know: Pritzker Prize in 2021, the EU Mies van der Rohe Award in 2019, the Henrik Tessenhoff Gold Medal, BDA, and many more other prizes. And I think that it's important to say that Anne is not only a practicing architect, but also an educator. She has been involved with teaching since early years. She was in Lausanne. She has been here in Madrid. We are very thankful that Txema was able to bring her since 2007, and she's right now this week in leading this workshop at MCH, and this is an example of her generosity towards education. She was also teaching in Zurich and in the United States, in Harvard, Buffalo, Florida, and Harvard. I forget many of them. I think that this educating activism goes beyond the academic environment. So not only for you, mostly of you students, I think that you have been a reference for all of us as architects, and you have been kind of telling us with a light where is the right path. We know many of your slogans that have been built or have been exemplified with built manifestos, your projects. that are representing your words. You speak about building with nearly nothing, and this is something that you can see in the authenticity of your architecture. You turn the words of Mies, less is more, into cheap is more, and this cheap is more, this cheapness brings affordability, and this affordability is what allows the user to have freedom, to have other qualities. You tell us to build simply, to build double. You expect us that we respect everything, not only nature, but everything that is before us. And this is reduced with something that you have often said, never demolishing, never undoing, and even you dare to put the question on the table as architect if we should in fact build anything, so to build or not to build. In our world where growth should be questioned and maybe reduction is the solution, and in this moment that we look for sustainability and material circularity, you have been for decades showing us the path with other words, but with a very with a high integrity, and this is something that I value in your work. Anne Lacaton and Philippe Vassal, Search for Beauty. I like to see the title of the lecture today, because I wanted to say this before seeing the title. I think they look for beauty, but this beauty is not what you find in the object, and they don't look for it in the aspect, but in somewhere deeper in the interior. They look for the beauty that you can find in the quality of space. That is what provides freedom to the inhabitants. Merci Anne, la parole est à vous. Thank you for being today with us.
So thank you very much for the invitation. It's a very long time that I come here for the MTH, but not so many general lectures like today, so I'm very happy to do it. And even more happy because of the topics of this lecture series, which is the crisis of housing. Not happy because there is a crisis of housing, but happy to have to talk about this, because for a long time it was out of the, as we say, radar, something which is not really taken in account enough, while it's something so important. So the housing is today probably one of the most critical challenge for contemporary architecture, but yet also the most beautiful, because as architects we know that we can try to do some things in favor of changing the situation. So the need for housing is increasing everywhere, yet most cities do not provide enough to fulfill the need. This is very critical. Housing is a factor of exclusion in the cities today, when it should be a condition of well-being, of quality of life, and good social relations. So in my opinion, because it's already a long time that we know that housing is in crisis everywhere, so we can analyze several possible causes for this housing crisis and the lack of housing everywhere. First, the cost of the construction in the cities, and especially in Europe, with an increase in over-bidding on construction standards, which often lead to unnecessary complexities, additional costs and delays. Building today is too complex, too much difficult, because we have piles and piles of normatives, which of course are are probably produced to improve the situation, but as they are all done in different ways, there is very often contradictions or incompatibility in dealing with them. So this is one of the problems why in many countries it's so difficult today to build enough housing. Of course, the speculation, which drives up prices, meaning that paradoxically, an empty building in the city could generate more profits than a rented building, which is something very difficult to understand, but it's in the reality in most of the big city centers. So today it's very necessary to question the production and the financialization of the housing, which has caused in most large cities housing to drift towards a market product, too normative, too constrained, too much standard, which has led to the reduction of housing space, smaller and smaller, to the establishment and acceptance of the idea of a minimum, which is, of course, the worst thing, to accept that the minimum could be the right solution. It has led also not to pay enough attention to the essential importance of the living space in making city more human and more sustainable. Besides these quite obvious factors, for me, two other factors seem to have created or contributed to the housing crisis. First, the general disengagement of public authorities from housing issues, which are no longer considered a public priority in many countries, in many cities, and the housing production has been left in the hands of the private market. So there is an urgency to redefine a public ambition and a collective vision for housing, which should be imposed to all, and especially the developers, by the public authorities. And today, public authorities are silent, almost everywhere. So social housing system has disappeared in many countries, and the private market makes the rules today. So, and finally, one of the very important cause for me of the problem of the crisis is the demolition of many residential buildings, which is carried out on a massive scale, destroying here and there in the cities thousands of square meters of useful space, which is not always rebuilt to provide housing for all. So on this topic, I will insist a little bit because it's for us a very important topic. These figures are really edifying and shocking. Every minute, a building in Europe is demolished. Every year, thousands of houses and millions of square meters of existing space are thrown away. By 2050, we will have demolished in Europe approximately 1.5 billion square meters of existing space, more than the entire cities of Athens, Berlin, Bucharest, and Paris combined. And this 1.5 billion of square meters would allow to house 50 million people. So enough living space to house around 50 million people. How is it possible that so shocking numbers have so little influence in the mindset in everywhere? So this is really shocking, and just to say that these numbers have been given by this European Citizens Initiative, which is called House Europe, which has the aim of collecting signatures, 2 million, to introduce this topic on the table of the European community, and because it's the level of protest that made possible to introduce on the discussion with politicians this issue of no demolition and transformation. So demolishing buildings, this is the kind of image that nobody likes to see. is a huge waste. It wastes homes, jobs, energy, money, and history. And more, it affects the lives of those who live there. So, and this is a topic on which we are working since a very long time, since the 2000, together with Jean-Philippe and another friend, Frédéric, and more recently we were joined by Christophe Hutin, which is not there, but also taking part to the MCH today. And we worked on this issue of demolition. Why today so much insistence of demolishing modern housing after 50 years, which is not at the end of the life, while transformation could be a solution. And we took some examples which were in the national French plan of renovation, urban renovation, based on the demolition of 200,000 modern units, normally to be replaced by new housing. And we work on this topic, transformation on housing block, to upgrade quality, extend living space, to increase pleasure and comfort, and to do more with less. And we worked in 2004, 20 years ago, on this research that we named PLUS, which was a series of case studies on places which were scheduled to be demolished, to study in detail what alternative could be done instead of demolition, but transformation. And in fact, on all the examples that we studied, different places, different construction systems, different neighborhoods, we always found a solution to transform and always to, in a way, deconstruct all the arguments which were there who led to demolition. For example, building, the structure is not good. Asbestos, but where? In general, they don't know. The investigation is not precise enough. That the cost of transformation is more important than demolition and rebuild, which is absolutely wrong. If you work a few hours on this topic, you immediately see that it's totally wrong. So we tried to demount all these arguments. I must say that unfortunately this research and 20 years of work after this were not enough to convince on this topic. And we are still today in the situation of being shocked, finding not acceptable, but still there, while you cannot see today any place where there are lectures, this title, reuse, transform, but what is the reality? The reality is not yet. So I'm sorry to be a bit nervous, but it's an important topic, and we don't really understand why this serious topic and so shocking numbers don't create more reactions than those we observe today. So when we started this study with this very strong statement, finally, never demolish, never subtract, remove or replace, always reuse, transform, give a new life with and for the inhabitants. And since 20 years, we have tried to respect this statement in all the projects, including, for example, the fact that we declined some commissions when a demolition was planned before, at the same place before the project. So, and this study was starting from basic principle that to see first, finally, what are the qualities of these places, and to observe that maybe in the 60s, 70s, because it was massively built, maybe the quality of living was not the major issue, and it was built fast without any major thoughts about what is the quality of housing. And we thought that maybe we could finish this work while we had in most of buildings this kind of very basic prefabricating construction, that we could transform the facade to open, to create outdoor space, outdoor balconies, and that would change simply the existing situation. From the inside, the same. From this poor small window, opening the wall. Very often in this period of construction, the facade walls are not structural. It's concrete or masonry, but they can be removed without affecting the structure, replaced by a large window and just a small balcony, and this changes situation. But also to reconsider all these qualities which has been abandoned in many places. For example, the presence of a housekeeper. In most of the building today, you don't have this anymore in the suburbs. Or using the first level for working spaces, because it's not better levels for living, or community spaces that today have been most of the time closed because the management was too difficult. So reintroduce all what we know today that makes the quality and good relationships for a community. Also the use of the roofs that could be easily transformed into community gardens. And doing this research, we could also compare the numbers, because it's very important also always to study the cost, the economy, because without controlling these questions, you have absolutely no chance. If you have a chance, you have no chance to convince that it's possible. So just in these studies and the case study we did, we could compare the cost of what is the number which was given by the government at the time for demolition and reconstruction of standard housing, 165,000 euros per dwelling. And in the other alternative of no demolition but transformation, then we could observe that in the calculation we arrived to 55,000, sometimes up to 60, 65 per dwelling for transformation, sustainable transformation, and for placing all the buildings in a new long cycle of life. So an example, because since after this study, we could make in 20 years 3 or 4 projects. This one is the most important in the city of Bordeaux. So we applied to the competition for the renovation of these 3 blocks that the city first wanted to demolish, but finally they didn't, because to relocate 500 tenants, it takes 10 years. So finally they abandoned the idea of demolishing. And in fact, it's very important that the subtitle is to transform the unloved, because it's very clear that these places are totally rejected for different reasons. For sometimes because they are located too far away from the city, or because this architecture was not really integrated in the culture. So we had to work on these 3 blocks. And following the principle that we studied in the PLUS, we proposed we say that, in fact, we will not make a transformation which has a goal to reshape the building. That is not our issue. The issue is to start from inside and to see how we could improve the quality of the living space. So it's important so this is just this view to show that this neighborhood in the city of Bordeaux is now fully integrated in the city center. But anyway, these blocks are still rejected, and at the time before the renovation, nobody wanted to come here. But anyway, the 3 buildings were full up because the rents are rather low. So what is important is never to stay at this place. Staying at this place means that you only see problems, and you never look for a kind of beauty, which is very important to start for looking for the qualities and the positive. Otherwise, you never go to the positive, and you leave the place, and those who come back to their office are totally convinced that this has no value and that it just should be teared down. So what is important is to go inside, to have this view, the backside of the facade. And then you see all these amazing situations that people have, families have enriched with their culture, with their decorations, with their collections, and so on. And in fact, it's important to visit one after one. And we did that. We visited the 530 families. And afterwards, we understood that finally we were not transforming or renovating a 3 big block, but we were working for 530 families to try to improve their home. So this kind of very various colors, decorations, and finally we thought that how we could do that, because we proposed to do this transformation without removing the inhabitants. And in fact, the project was to think how we could do that without having to touch all of this, which makes the life of the people. So, and we arrived to the point, but it was also some conclusions of the research plus, that instead of trying to restructure the space, for example, to enlarge a kitchen or to enlarge, it was much better to keep the structure as it is, to keep the space, but to give an additional space, which will compensate the lack of space somewhere, but not in restructuring everything. Because working with an occupied site means that you don't do important structural works, because it cannot be, it's too much disturbing. So we proposed on these long slabs to make this extension. What is yeah? This extension here on one long side of almost 4 meters, and to transform all the small windows into large transparent doors, including this one, so that finally keeping the structure of the apartment to give this extra space in front where all the former rooms are connected with the new space, which create not only additional space but a lot of new mobility inside the housing. So which means for example, one of these apartments here, which is one single orientation, one where when 60% of the apartment have 2 orientations. So it means that this addition creates almost the same quantity of square meters than the existing. And doing this also, it provides a very good thermal efficiency, which means that we didn't have, of course we replaced all the glass window, but we didn't have to make any insulation of the existing wall, because the winter garden, it's proved by now many studies that the winter garden is more effective than any 15 centimeters of mineral wood. So, and we applied this to all the levels. In the ground floors also some interventions to reorganize the entrance hall and the creation of a bike or trolleys storage. And this was also the methodology of works, because working on occupied site means that a lot of things must be very well anticipated to make sure that you don't have any problems when the construction starts. So that was the process that we proposed at the stage of the competition to make sure that the proposal could be understood and trusted in the right way. So we did, after the competition, we won the competition, and we organized a number of meetings with the people in groups to explain the different changes, and we did this prototype in reality that become a space with all informations on the construction, and anybody could come here and have meetings and could meet the owner, could meet the architects, the contractors, and so on. And this became the kind of show flat of the project during all the construction. Then there was also an important work which was made to inform in life the inhabitants, first about the kind of guide of the construction, but also some email address or website where they could find all informations updated all the time, and also how to connect with the group, which was formed by 1 or 2 persons from the client, 1 architect from the team, and one worker from the contractor, which were permanently at the disposal of the inhabitants to answer any question or to help. For example, old people to help moving a table or moving something if they need it. So, and this booklet was explaining in detail all the process, and also there was a long discussion between the association of tenants and the owner to discuss about how it will be after the renovation, will the rent be increased or not, and finally there was an agreement that the total amount will not increase for the tenants. And then we started the process of construction, one of the 2 big long blocks, 175 meters long and 15 levels. So, and the process of these modules prefabricated out of the site and just coming there for from the truck and mounted on the site, and the final result. So the process of mounting, which was just this concrete module guided by two guys. It's very important because for this old construction they had very thin floors, so it was important to prefabricate elements that could also have this kind of thickness, otherwise we would have lost height. So, and the process of the construction, level by level, columns, floors, and when we had secured some levels, then we could start the process of transforming the windows into doors, and this process should take no more than 2 days. That was a commitment, because more than 2 days it was difficult for people. The first day we removed the asbestos and the glass windows, and we cut the handrail, and the second day the glass windows were coming, and we had afterwards just to renovate the interior after this change of the facade, the winter garden. And a few weeks later, the inhabitants could get the use of the winter garden and start their appropriation. So another way to view this, we put temporary partitions behind to protect from the dust and so on, and to make sure that it was acceptable for inhabitants to stay here. So the process of cutting the handrails and the frames, which come the second day, and the glass windows. And this was made afterwards from inside. But at the moment the glass windows are placed, the apartment can be closed, and the next step can come with openings to winter garden and appropriation. And this is a change that it has introduced from a basic bedroom with living room with windows, a large window opening to the winter garden, as well for the kitchen. And this extra space, which is totally free of function, and the place for the appropriation. So when the transformation is really radical after this extension. We also added a few larger apartments on the roof, because there were only typologies of two bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. So we added some places on the roof with very light construction, dealing with chimneys. That makes a very interesting plan. with the chimneys inside the place. But very nice case studies with a fantastic view on the city and the transformation afterwards. And now it's a place where everyone would like to rent, and the inhabitants who stay there and who supported the works now are very proud of their building. Just a few numbers to explain the benefit that this project has brought. 100% existing conserved, 53% of surface added. More important is that by doing this winter gardens, but also renovating some heating regulation, insulation of the north facade, the consumption of primary energy was divided by 3. And of course, the carbon footprint is less important than demolition and rebuild. It's a bit difficult to calculate all of this because nobody has really the right formula to do it. Maybe it's even more significant, but we didn't take the most favorable formulas. So what is interesting also is that 100% of the building was occupied during the construction, except the 2 or 3 apartments which were just here to help for people to be quiet in the day. No increase of the rent, plus charges. Charges means heating, the cost of maintenance, elevators and so on. And the cost of this transformation costed 52,000 euros in 2017, while the city has estimated the cost for demolition and rebuild to 160,000. And interesting also that it's public social housing, but the company received only 20% of public subsidies, and the 80% are funded by the social housing company through a mortgage, because these buildings every month bring a lot of income with the rents. So just quickly a few other examples that we could do. This one is in Paris. We transformed this tower block by added winter garden, new surfaces, and for 97 housing units. And again, the transformation is brings radical quality inside. This process was also very interesting because here we had only 97 tenants and not 530. So we did a different process of participation, which was not really possible in the other case, but also because here the situation was much more critical because a lot of tenants were complaining that the situation was very bad. So it was important to take this time of discussing or integrating the inhabitants into the process. So we did a number of meetings, but we did also personal visits and personal discussion with every tenant. And we could observe through these visits that almost 40% of the families were not in the right typology, either too big or too small, but they didn't dare to ask anything because they didn't want to leave the building and the neighborhood. So we asked the client to put all of this transparent and clear, and to make sure that at the end everybody could be replaced in the right way. And this was the final result after all this investigation when we arrived finally to replace by some movement inside the block to replace the families. For example, we had a family of 18 persons in an apartment of 5 bedrooms. But they didn't ask anything. So finally we relocated them in 3 apartments. And they had enough space, enough bedrooms. So all of this work was patient. It was supported also by some sociologists. we were discussing with the inhabitants a part of the project, because there are a lot of very private things that, of course, as architects, we are not to know. But at the end, it became like a small miracle, and we arrived to relocate everyone on the right place. So another project in west of France, a block of, it's a neighborhood with probably 10 or 20 blocks like this one. And here it's interesting because we not only did the extension, but also we took profit that there was a lot of empty ground around the block for car parking, totally unused. And we proposed to a densification of the building to increase the number, which was also very efficient for the social housing company, because they could build apartments on a plot that they already belong with all the networks. And we did 40 additional housing. So, and here it's again the process of transforming the existing. And the most recent one is in Belgium, in the neighborhood of Anderlecht, and we did a similar process, also in occupied site, and we completed it very recently. So the transformation, as now we are convinced, is a very important opportunity to upgrade massively the quality of housing and to provide very good housing for all, affordable, with less money and in a more sustainable way. It's important to also to observe that this kind of situation you can find a huge number in the city, everywhere. So, and it's important to think that every building, every dwelling can be transformed, every plot can be increased at the right measure, sometimes a little, sometimes not at all, for a sustainable and qualitative densification, and for the benefit of living space and uses and inhabitants, which is the most important aim of designing housing. So, for example, this map is an investigation that we did in the city of Bordeaux, and all these places we identified the potential of transformation and also a potential of densification. And it was, in fact, in the context of the study kicked off by the municipality of Bordeaux, because they plan to build 50,000 new dwellings in the next 5 to 10 years, but they didn't know where to find the place to do it. And finally, they saw that it was good to make it around the new transport, the new public transport. But finally, we found that in this case, we could find very easily the potential for 50,000 without having to create a new land or new network. This is very interesting to do this investigation, which are made on the ground, street by street, block by block, and which is not a view from a map or view from the sky, but a view of the reality on the place. So, but in fact, the problem is that, unfortunately, if we come back to the crisis, and these projects are, of course, very interesting because they show one of the solutions, but it's important to say that, unfortunately, the crisis is leading us back to a narrow-minded way of thinking, is leading us to focus on quantity and standards. In fact, the crisis should not let us forget that housing is first about people's lives, comfort and pleasure. And this is, the housing is very important because it's the main space in most people's daily life. The massive housing shortage should not be an excuse to build poor quality housing that is too small, which does not inspire any pleasure, neither dreams. So, and the crisis should not lead, as it is very often today, to a loss of ambition and generosity. So, and this ambition of generosity, we try to have it, of course, in the transformation, but also in any housing project. So now it's just about a few new construction. Not all of them are recent, but just to say that first inhabiting, beyond the functional, is about freedom, comfort, generosity of space, of uses, pleasure, and luxury for all. It's what we have always in mind when we start designing housing, with this kind of list of qualities that also we like to try to apply to every project: generosity, free space, extra space, capacity of appropriation, transparency, inside, outside, continuity, movement, open structure, private outdoor space, space of transition, pleasure, and imagination. So, and this leads to say that finally every dwelling should have the same facility as a villa. It doesn't mean, of course, like in this picture, one single house on a single plot, but just as a dream of space, which everybody dreams about this kind of house. But it's important to think that this kind of dream, we can do it even in the density. And it's our job as architects to create this, and we can do it. So what means a dwelling like a villa? And it's just a little comparison between what is a standard housing today, as you receive in the brief from the developer, very, very small rooms. For example, an apartment of 2 bedrooms, 60 to 65 square meters. And just one way to circulate inside, one entrance, one corridor. And we think that what makes a difference when you evoke a villa is all these facilities that you should introduce with additional private space, winter gardens, terraces, all this unprogrammed space that we estimate that it should be at a minimum 50%. Of course, at the same cost to be affordable. So for us, all of this is important. Maybe it's not a car. Today, car maybe we don't need anymore. But this kind of extra space, which is given to the freedom of every person. So we started. I will go very fast because this house is now more than 30 years ago. We did it. But it was our goal at the time for this family of workers with low incomes that wanted to build their house. And architects, as young architects, we were really involved in doing something which was much, much better than any standard that they were ready to buy from a catalog. So we introduced here this principle of building double. It means that if you need 65, 70 square meters for 3 bedrooms a house, then we can build 150. And this is what we did for this house, with this greenhouse exposed to the garden and to the east, which is also very important in terms of climatic comfort and efficiency. And finally, this space has become an extra living room, not at all a greenhouse, but an extra space, which is a place which is changing the most often in the house. Because inside, the sofa is always at the same place, the beds, but this place is always changing during the seasons and during the mood, according to the mood of the people. So this house was, for us, very important. We worked a long time on it to arrive to it, but we learned so much, and we became so free after this project to think that finally there is no conventional solution, and that we have to find anything that at the end leads to a generous result. So the house, when it's closed. A few time later, on the same principle, we had to work on collective housing, again for social housing, rented social housing, and we proposed to the client to, we were 5 architects working on the same plot, and we proposed for our project to the client to work on this principle of extra space and doubling the space. The client, as social housing estate, had just one, he was open for a lot of solutions. he had just one rule, that we work with the budget he had for this, because it's subsidized housing by the state. So, and that was also, again, a long process, but we arrived to achieve this project, which is made with very simple construction, but with this idea that finally we could have 2 levels by the city regulation. And in fact, the idea was that it is represented in these renderings, is that every dwelling should have 1 space on the ground floor and 1 space on the first floor, alternate, sometimes large on top and small on ground floor, or the opposite. And this sketch was made very early in the process. And this is a plan. We came out from this with, you see, all the apartments crossing orientation, 20 meters long, which is something that in the school you learn that you should not do that. But it's important, because if you talk about extra space, it doesn't mean that all the space are similar, and having also some more dark space inside the house can become also quality. So we experience this, and that worked very well. So the construction is very simple, because to keep the budget, it was important to think about how to build this space, and we used prefabricated construction to make this concrete table, and on top 3 rows of agricultural greenhouse that we used with all the system to regulate the climate inside. And this is the result with, again, for example, this apartment as this part here, plus here and winter garden. So, and the result is, for example, for this apartment, 4 bedrooms dwelling in duplex. The surface is 165 square meters, while the standard requested was 100. The construction cost was 90 in 2005, but just as a comparison, was 90,000 euros net, exactly the same price as the 100 square meter. And the owner, our client, was very good, because we discussed on this issue of more surface, more rent, which is always the answer you have when you want to do more, to give more. You have this answer: no, you cannot do, because otherwise I should increase the rent, and it's not anymore affordable for social housing. But in this case, because this client was very open and he wanted to change something in the way they were doing, he accepted to, in a way, to revise this strategy. And finally he said, but in fact it's not a law. It's a practice that has become a law. So finally, I don't feel forced to respect something which is not a law. And he decided finally not to rent in function of the square meters, but in function of the cost of the apartment. As if we have made 100 square meters for the same cost, the rent would have been the same. So, of course, it's very interesting when you can work with such people who also have the desire to invent also in their own field. So this is, we already experimented, this was completed in 2005, all the system of deep facade with 4 elements, thermal curtains, and very recently we published a research with the engineers of Atmoslab. Raphael is here. They recalculated, because at the time you cannot imagine, in 2005, no calculation, just a kind of intuition that we arrived to convince the intuition also based on a very accurate study of how the greenhouses are working, especially with cross-ventilation that immediately cool down the space, or the sun immediately brings a lot of temperature. So finally, because it was subsidized, we had to prove also that it was working. But it was difficult, and the administration said, no, you will not have the subsidies because it doesn't work. So finally we went to the Ministry of Housing to ask for a deviation. And we proposed our project with our very intuitive calculation demonstration, and they laughed a lot. But they say, we laugh, but it's because you are very clever, and of course your project works amazingly well, but you are not able to prove it because the models don't allow to do these kind of things. And one of them accepted to help us to transfer all of this into the arcanes of the law, and we got a very good result, and we got the subsidies to do it. So it's very important for us as architects also to push the doors and not always to stay behind the laws, regulation, because you see that in France is a case, a law has always a little things where you can deviate. And it's important to find this gap where you can propose not to deviate the result, but to change the way to arrive to the result. And in this project, we learned so many things because nothing is very conventional, but it works in a way very well. So, and now you can see this guy is working at home, is doing cartoons for children. So why he is able to do this is because the living room is 60 square meters. So he can work, he can have the family life. So it's important to have all this space for the everyday life. The books, the stairs to go upstairs, and upstairs the winter garden where he comes here to think and to dream. So with the same client, more recently, we also worked on this little residence for seniors. It was a demand of creating small apartments for retired people who don't need anymore a large house. And we did this 18 apartments in this plot with this plan in air following the streets, and behind a kind of communal space which has two levels, one level for the summertime or springtime, which is under greenhouse, but we have a similar one on the ground floor for the winter, which is inside and heated. And all the apartments, which have all one bedroom, kitchen, living, around 52 square meters, they have all this additional space of winter garden plus a large terrace, which all in all makes something like 100 square meters of usable space. So again, this extra space made by this complex facade, which makes this, we call that winter garden, but in fact it works as well in winter as a buffer zone than in summer, when it's totally open as a kind of loggia protecting the facade from the sun ray. So it has, in a way, the two interesting climatic actions. So, and you see that even elderly, old people, they have also this creativity of bringing their furniture, but also very open to have this kind of space, which is so different from the house where they are coming from. So even the bathroom open to the corridor, which was in a way well accepted. And for the ground floor, instead of a terrace, they have winter garden plus a garden. So the cost of construction again was not so expensive, and all in all they have 52 interior space plus 18 winter garden plus 27 terrace or garden. So the quality of living, it's we were talking about dwelling as a villa, it means that you can create this in any situation, and this is a project for the Swiss Railways company in just close to a new train station, and that they asked to build here. This was a competition to ask a tower with 5 levels of offices and the 14 other levels for housing. And here again, on a different way, it's Switzerland, different ways of building, different rules, but it's also a very simple construction. So you see this, this permanent relation between the inside, a winter garden, and a small balcony around. So, and this makes, in a different way also, very good quality of housing. So again, and this is the last part of my presentation, if I have still time.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's how, until now, I show transformation of housing blocks, new housing, but now there are new kind of projects which appear, which is the reuse and the reprogrammation of buildings, which were not used before for housing, but they are reused or reprogrammed into housing. So this one was a former hospital in Paris, vacant for 40 years. And this hospital now is the ownership of the city of Paris, and they develop a new housing neighborhood. So we worked on competition for this project, which was maternity. And very interesting building because, in fact, inside it's an open structure. It's not concrete walls, but just columns and open space, which in a way it's very good for the transformation because you can reorganize the different levels. So very good quality of architecture with these brick walls, windows, all this in not a too bad state. And in fact, the city was asking not only to renovate, but to densify the site, and where, for example, here it could be possible to do 50 dwellings, they were requesting 120 or something like this. So behind this, there was also the idea that you have two solutions, either to make the 120 inside but very small, or to keep the line, giving a larger apartment, and to find another solution. So the city regulation allowed to create additional levels. So the proposal was to keep the building as it is, with a simple renovation and reorganization of the space inside, and to create these additional levels on top, with a very little need of reinforcement, because the building, it seems that the building already planned in the project to accept more loads on the foundation. So we have not so many works of reinforcement to do this, and doing this and following the shape of the setback and so on of the city. So we have proposed this section with some levels which are half in basement, half outside. So the proposal was to reuse all these parts here as atelier, but some of the places here for a cafe, community space, and to have all the housing above this level, from the first level in the existing and the new spaces. So, and this is renderings. We didn't start yet the construction because it's a very bourgeois neighborhood, and all the new projects here, there is prosecution from the neighbors because they don't want to see anything changing in their neighborhood, and because they claim that it's degrades the value of the place. So since 2 years, we are waiting now judgment. And finally, the judgment just kept a very little argument. Maybe now we can start soon the construction. So, and we did also, because it was a very old garden, and we did with the landscape architect investigation on all the existing plants to keep them at the maximum, and they did this survey of all the plantation to make sure that, except those which were already dead, that we can keep them and integrate them in the garden. So we have just added this greenhouse, which is recovering a former barrack that we removed just to change it. So this is just a few numbers, 9,500 existing square meters, 14,000 after transformation. It means 130 apartments, all of them more than 100 square meters, and 2,000 square meters of activity. And in fact, what we try to do is to use the existing without, as I told you, there was just some columns, but we try to use it in without changing too much the structure. So all the apartments, almost them, they have double orientation, with a rule that every living room should have at least 3 windows, and the fourth one if the kitchen is connected. So it gave us a kind of measure, because the client is a private developer, and immediately he asked for cutting into, having a corridor. But finally, we arrived to keep the strategy, and finally is accepted, as well as a strategy of not doing any difference between the 20% of social housing and the private housing which will be sold. So we don't know where they will be located, because we have insisted to make them all similar. And in the new part, it's a different organization, because here again here it was not interesting, neither possible to open the windows, because the quality of light is enough good inside. So there was absolutely not necessary to change anything. So we just took care to give enough windows for any apartment, while in the new construction we have this winter garden surrounding the construction and all the apartments which are inside. 4 bedrooms here of 100 square meters, and here 3 bedrooms of 76 square meters plus 20 square meters of winter gardens on both sides, which is also very efficient for the energy saving, because the city of Paris has a very high level of requirements in everything. So we should not send any rainwater in the network, so we should keep so a lot of things that we had to do there. So I will not explain more, but just to see you that here this is the windows of the existing, and this large apartment, because we use the full depth of the existing building, and this is the new apartments. So another example in Zurich, how to transform buildings when demolition is planned. This is a place which is called Maghalle. It was a former factory in the middle of a neighborhood which has been almost dismantled to be replaced by new housing, and just this place is still there. So the competition asked to demolish everything except the yellow building, which is listed as an heritage building, but just to demolish this, to create almost the same function. It means, a concert hall, polyvalent space, public space, plus a important number of new apartments. So following our general strategy, never demolish and so on. So this is a place where it is today a very popular place, where you have a lot of concerts, but also the Philharmonie was there during the renovation of their opera house. And finally, in the competition, we proposed not to demolish, to use everything that can be still used, no demolition, and to proceed by addition and accumulation by creating these new blocks, which takes the columns on places which today are not used for the concert halls, but more storage, or this one which is on the edge with all the columns outside. And in fact, to reconfigure all this construction in a new one with the existing which is kept, the protected building, but also the industrial wall, and to add all this new surface with this, in a way, simple action, the existing situation, these new buildings, but all the other buildings are kept, and we adapt, we reuse, we reformate spaces inside. So the roof of the former factory was transformed into a garden with greenhouses, and the ramp was created to bring to this public garden. And you see here this new construction with the columns just in front the existing, and the new block here with the apartment. So we could create in this project 165 new flats, and the new project could be implemented without interrupting the activity. So finally we lost the competition because, for a simple reason, is that because there was a new master plan. The new master plan asked for a larger street, and the new limit for the construction was there. But because we were keeping the existing, we were out of the limit of construction of the master plan. So in a way it could not be accepted, which is a bit ridiculous, because this building was there before the new master plan. So there was a huge discussion in the city, a lot of protest. So finally, the situation today is that nothing has been built. It's still the same situation. But the city has cancelled the master plan and has agreed that this building should be kept. Of course, there will be another project, but finally this competition helped to change the city rules. Okay, and this was renderings of the situation, the old concert, and all these new apartments above the existing. So without wasting the existing, still in use and in good state, with no loss of quality, no usage, and in fact a project of densification, of optimization of the city ground. And very briefly, a last one that we are currently studying, which is a transformation of an office building into housing. It's I think it's a pure typology of administration building of the 60s, where they were collecting taxes and so on, which is vacant, built in the 67, and vacant since 2020, and the state has sold the building, and the company was bought it, asked us to make a project for transformation into housing. One of the first action as for also the housing blocks is to make the catalog of what we call qualities, values, to make sure that they will stay on place and that we will not destroy what is already good. And we start from this. And in fact, this is a regular plan of the 4 branches covering a plinth. And in fact, the width of this office building was a bit narrow, because either we could make crossing orientation apartments, but then we would have needed more stairs and more elevators. But finally, we did the choice to make some additions on the gable walls here, which are blind walls, to create additional space with new facade, transparent facade, so changing also the quality of the building. And here some additions to extend a little bit the width and make possible have two on two sides, one single orientation apartment but with a normal side, and to change the axis of the corridor. And all around this yellow space is additional balconies. And this is the transformation. We could keep the activity on the basis with 3 levels, and also create 88 apartments plus 90 student apartments. So now this project is going on well, and we should start the construction in the next spring. So just to conclude, and to come back to the housing and what makes, in fact, the good housing, and how we could try to struggle against this crisis of housing. It's important to consider that we need, and it's a priority, to rethink the basis of the quality of housing, to state housing as a major challenge for contemporary society, to define the imperative qualities that any housing should have always, without any distinction of social class, of category, of budget and place. And it's important to consider this, that quality and generosity of housing, affordability, diversity of people and ways of life are the essential conditions to make the city, and to try to struggle against the principle that housing should be removed from its financial and social classification. It's about opposing to the principle of housing as a financial project, which, to my opinion, is one of the causes of the crisis today, and to return to the idea of quality, inhabiting, freedom, pleasure, and luxury for all, as Mrs. Ramos is saying in Winter Garden in Le Grand Parc in Bordeaux. In my winter garden, I feel very free. So thank you very much. Maybe it's a question of also personality, and for us it has always been important to know as architects what sense we wanted to give to our job, because it's a hard work. As you see, we have to deal with a lot of different questions, issues, different people, people who have absolutely no care of anything. So, and because it's difficult, it's important that your commitment is great, and so that at the end you don't regret anything, whatever the result is. You can make mistakes. The result is not always at the highest level that you would like, but it's important to give all your efforts to do this. And maybe it's the way for us architects to survive. Because you can see today that most of things are made not without architects, but the respect towards the architects is not so great. But it's important also because there is a number of issues that, because of our education, because of our skill, because of our capacity of looking behind the problems and thinking also in terms of positive, in terms of beauty, in terms of pleasure, maybe we, because of our education, we have this capacity. And it's very important that we use this skill and this capacity for the good. So, of course, it's sometimes it's difficult, but I'm totally sure that being an architect and always being behind what we are asked to do, norms, things you don't agree with, I'm sure that it's not possible to do it. So maybe it's a choice, and I think that as architects, it's also our chance to have this flexibility, this freedom of thinking to new solutions, to dare also to criticize, because it's not because things are repeated that they are right. It's not because there is a law that the law is there forever. So we have also this role of pushing, yes, to changing things.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for this amazing presentation. And I would like to ask you for just your opinion about another tendency that is growing in Europe in reusing and circularity design and projects which are being designed for disassembly. And what's your opinion about it? And if you have implemented those kind of design projects in your competitions or your designs? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Now, you can imagine that disassembling to rebuild, it's exactly the opposite of what we try to do, which is doing with what we have and trying to perform, to add or not add, but to do with what we have. Because for me, there is something very difficult to understand, why it is dismantled if it has still a life for somewhere else. So why not use the cycle of life until the end where it is? So for me, I don't really understand this new strategy of disassembling, or it's maybe a Polish word to say demolishing. I don't see really what is behind this because I don't see the benefit. I don't see the economy. I don't see why. If you look carefully of what you already have, if you analyze with a lot of precision the state of everything, because it's totally wrong that obsolescence is a whole. As obsolescence is fragmentary. So you have different levels of obsolescence, and it's not because the building has 50 years that everything is bad. So it's important to have this very precise and detailed investigation to define element by element where is the cycle of life of these elements, and to deal with that. And I don't really agree with this. For me, it's an argumentation to justify demolition.
Thank you very much for the conference. It's always super inspiring. My question maybe is a bit specific, and it's about the project, the first project in Bordeaux. Before building all the terraces, you make a small prototype of one of the facades. And I would like to know, I mean, I understand the value because you see the feedback of the users, no? And I would like to understand which was that feedback and if that prototype helped or to develop the next step of the project. Thank you.
I'm not sure that it helped so much to develop technically the project, but it was important to illustrate the discussion with the tenants, because you show plans, you show sections, you show renderings, but for many people it's very difficult to project that what they show will be also the change in their apartment. So that was very important to also to have something that could also replace the discussion in another format than just being facing and asking questions, and because in such a big community, you may understand that also it's not always, sometimes it's a bit conflictual between the tenants and their owner. Also the owner is a good company and makes a lot, but you know, it's a principle also that sometimes there are some conflicts, people who are not happy. And in fact, if you just stay at the level of discussions, in a way, sometimes you miss tools to go further. And this prototype was also this, in a way, third third element that, in a way, could bring the discussion in a different way. So it helped a lot, and the inhabitants could really appropriate the idea. So we could also explain how it will work during the construction, how long they will be disturbed by, because in fact the construction lasted almost 2 years, but in fact every block of stairs, it was 3 months. So when we finished at the end, the first block was finished since 1 year. So it was also important to explain also all of this to the people and to make sure that they, it was necessary to do it, but not to learn something for the technique.
As a teacher of construction, I am interested in how would you change your projects, building them in South Spain. In South Spain, where hot weather and excess of sun is the opposite problem with your completely glassed architecture. So, as an investor, I would like to contact you in Malaga or Sevilla.
Please do it.
In order to teach the students the big differences between these magnificent projects, who I consider they shouldn't copy them in our actual climate conditions.
In fact, this project is not a recipe to change the facade. It starts from also an important understanding of the relation with climate. And it's why this buffer zone is relevant in such places. But when you understand this, you can understand in some other places with different answers. But for example, if you look at this, the summer situation, where everything is open, then you can completely refer to the logias in south of Spain, where in fact the thing is not to make a buffer for winter, but a kind of shadow, shaded space, which prevent you have to, which always cool down the temperature inside, and then you can cool down what and also create ventilation. So more or less, I think that this this deep space in front of a facade works in many places. What is changing is just the composition of the different elements. Maybe here it will be more shading, more dark shading, because it's important to cut the sun rays. But it's more or less, it would be a similar space, which is to make a distance between the space which is supposed to be either heated or cooled and the outside. And it's proved that a winter garden has a higher temperature than outside in winter. A loggia with a shadow has a lower temperature than outside. And this is the basic principle that you can apply in many places. Of course, with different materials, taking care to the orientation. For example, when for a long time we were thinking that the winter garden was good on more in the south or west, because it was a kind of radiator, a capture of energy. But finally now, when we have enough money, we do also some on the north, but it doesn't play the same role. In the north, it's not capturing energy, it's a buffer zone, like an insulation. While in the south, it's more difficult, because sometimes you have to deal with the heat, sometimes you have to deal by closing everything to keep the warm inside. But the basic principle And I know that it's not something that we know all of us because we have all forgotten this very basic principle of understanding climate, but it starts from the strong understanding of the relation of climate that we have to manage, and not considering that the buildings are kind of islands with their self system. We ignore totally what happens behind. So.
Hello, and thank you very
Hello.
much for
Thank
this
you.
lecture. I have 2 questions. The first one is, I know you have this policy to not demolish or to just add, but there are some times when demolishing is needed. So how do you take those decisions? That's the first question. And the second one is, how do you establish a dialogue between the old and the new, if there is any? Do you think, or do you believe that it is necessary to separate the old and the new, or do you think that it should be better to integrate them?
I think for the first one, forget this argument, because the number of buildings that should be demolished for structural reason or bad condition is so little. But it's always the argument which is told by those who are in favor of demolishing. Yes, but if you have to, maybe it may happen, but it's not the major case. And of course, it's an analysis. If it's obvious that one building is so bad, of course, maybe demolition is a solution. But you understand that our radicality is not towards this. It's towards all of those who are demolished that should not be demolished, which is the immense majority. So it's something that, of course, this argument, yes, but, it's something I hate, yes, but, because it's always, at the end, you don't do anything. So this is, sorry, my first answer. And the second is question? Okay. It's again, it's question of case by case. It's not a principle. It's important there are a lot of different factors and criteria. There is sometimes you have some factors of architecture, not always and not in these blocks, but sometimes it may happen. Most often you have the issue of structure. How you can deal with another structure? This structure should be supported by the old one, or should it be beside? Then you have this issue of how does it work with the wind? How does it work with earthquake? So all of this is a result of a very a process of engineering, of architecture, that you have to study all these factors and afterwards to decide. You may have also, for example, in the extension of the big blocks, you have also to take care about the heights, because the new construction, because of the calculation, the floor today is thicker than the floor built in the 70s. It's not because it works better, but the rules and the factors are changed. So all of this, it's important to make sure that the connection are good, the connection between one building and the other one. So there is, for me, there is not really a rule. There is a case-by-case appreciation. In terms of architecture, for us, it's important that the two of them have their own identity and not to try to integrate or assimilate anything. When we add something, we do it as we build today, with the tools today, with the materials of today, with the materials you find easily around, with estimation of the cost. All of these are elements which, in a way, enter in the decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. I think that we wrap it up here with the questions. much for,
Thank you.
for your
Thank you for your welcome.
And please continue inspiring us with your projects.